Welcome to session one. Welcome to session one of the TheEdCollabGathering. We're really excited to be here with you today. My name is Tom Marshall. I am a principal in Paramus, New Jersey. I'm also a former staff developer at the Teachers College Reading and Writing Project, where I actually met Chris and worked with him. I also am the author of Reclaiming the Principalship, a book for school leaders and district leaders on how to be an instructional leader in all that they do. I also run different kinds of study groups, cohorts for literacy coaches and principals, and that's where I met my friend Josh here, who is joining us today as well. And we're going to talk to you a little bit about that. Josh, you want to?
My name is Josh Chuy. I am a building principal for grades 4 and 5 in Mawa. I'm in an intermediate school. I met Tom about 5 years ago through his network.
Perfect. So what we're going to talk to you about today, like if you're not a principal, you're not a supervisor, don't be alarmed, because this could still be good for you, because what we're going to talk about is the ways that you can create communities of practice. We are going to use most of our examples through the lens of principals. Go back. And so our talk this morning is going to have a couple of main sections. The first part is going to be talking about rethinking what the role of a principal or what the role of a leader is, and how we can do our work so we're not so we're supporting kids' learning, not getting in the way of it. Then we're going to talk about our network and ways that you can network with others to get smart with others, because sometimes it's really lonely being in the principal's office. And then the last part of our work this morning is going to be how we take the learning that we get by working with one another and applying it to our work as leaders, and how we can coach teachers most effectively to support kids' learning and change the climate of our schools so that they can really be countries and worlds of learning for kids and for teachers. So we're going to get started now. Somebody told me once that when you gain something, you lose something. Whenever you get something that you've been waiting for, you get your driver's license when you're a teenager, and all of a sudden you have this whole newfound independence, but you also lose the connection that you might have with your parents when they're driving you around, which maybe when you're a teenager doesn't really matter. When you get married, you get this whole new world, this exciting thing that you may have been waiting for, but you also lose the independence to just get up whenever you want and just travel the world, right? And the same thing is true when you become a principal. When you take on a leadership role, you gain something. You gain more authority, you gain more access to things, you gain a lot of responsibility, but you also start to lose your connection with the classroom and, you know, being in the trenches and trying to be right there for kids in their learning. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that way, because if you take an instructional stance, if you take a learning stance to your work as an administrator or a leader, you can keep all of that and do the kind of work that's going to support kids in their learning, not just get in the way of it.
So when you look at principal as a definition, you see a lot of things like controlling, authority, chief, the head man or woman. It's an executive authority for a school. That's the noun version of it. So when you start getting to principal, you should really think about principal teacher.
Because the original title of the people who are in principals now, 100 years ago, schools were run by people called the principal teacher. So it was the teacher that was the most senior, or the teacher that came from a wealthy family, or the teacher who whose family owned the school. And they were still a teacher, but they were just the one that ran the place.
You need to keep teaching the teaching part at the core of it. It's extremely important. So when you start thinking of it and you think of an administrator, as you start going through things, an administrator is someone who pushes someone else's vision. And really, if you really are a teacher, then you should be teaching your vision, not pushing someone else's.
So we want to stop thinking of ourselves as administrators, even as sitting in the principal's office, and thinking of ourselves more as principal teachers. So that way, even though you gain something by becoming a principal, by becoming a leader of your school, you don't have to lose that. You don't have to lose that connection with your students and with the learning that made us all want to get into teaching to begin with. So now, what we're going to do is we're going to take a close look at the power of working together with professional friends, of networking. So what I'd like to tell you a little bit about is the story of how our network got started. So why don't we go back to the slides? Sure. So a bunch of years ago, about 7 years ago to be exact, we were having some summer PD, and there was about 15 principals in our group. And it was the last day of a 4-day PD, and everybody was all psyched because we were, whoops, sorry, 1 second. Everybody felt empowered about writing, but we all had this like sinking feeling that once this ends, we're going to go back and we're going to deal with the acronyms that fill our days. We're going to deal with scheduling and parents and lunch and all sorts of other things. And so we made a pact that we were going to stick together. And 5 times throughout the year, we made dates that we were going to go and visit one another in each other's schools. And word started to spread. And that actually has grown. We went from 15 people to we're now at over 150 principals from all over New Jersey and beyond who get together 5 times a year to study best practices and how we can support and supervise good literacy instruction. But we also talk about STEM and other things we can do so that we can really be instructional leaders that we really want to be.
So then we get into why network. Leadership can be very lonely. It's a sense of safety and power and numbers. A lot of times when you're in a certain position, if you go to the higher powers that be, you might feel that you're being judged. If you go to the ones you want to go to staff, you might feel that they're looking at you in a different way. So sometimes you do feel by yourself. With these networks, you always have somebody that you could kind of go to and you could kind of lean on and bounce off ideas or just get advice from.
Also, people think that principals have all this power. And if you're a principal, you probably understand that that's not exactly true. Because everyone thinks that we know the answer to everything. Everyone thinks that we can just wave a magic wand and make things happen, but that's not exactly how that goes, right? So get together with other people who are in your position. You try to learn together with them. That's where you can learn more about the work that you need to do.
So when you start sharing best practices, as Tom mentioned, it's true. You know everything, and the problem is that you don't know everything, and if you start and like you know it, then you're going to lose your credibility, and that's one thing that obviously you don't want to go into. It's important to share your challenges. Obviously, there's obstacles that are going to be in the way, and by networks, you're learning that you're not the only one who's facing these challenges, and they have ways of navigating through these obstacles, and they're telling you that, or they're also telling you, hey, I went through it, or I am going through it. So it gives you a sense of like reassurance that, but like, it's not just me.
And these 2 points, sharing your best practices and sharing your challenges, are critical to working together. And so if you think of what the lens of your network is, like ours is balanced literacy, you get to work with principals who have been down the same exact path that you're on. And so they might be able to share with you things that they've done in order to support the work and make it successful. So you don't have to feel like you're the one that's inventing this wheel again and again and again. There's others that have gone down this way before that can help you, and you'll be there to help others just as well.
So you're talking through issues that promote or hold back in the relationship. Having that, and that hopefully is going to promote growth within yourself and within your building and within your children that you're supporting in the schools. And then develop a sense of community. The important thing about this is it's a community of thoughts. It's people coming together, talking about things that they're going through, maybe taking this crazy idea at first and watching it come to fruition. And you know, it's something about that makes it really beautiful to watch, that you know that you have this small little thing and then all of a sudden it becomes this real big, huge thing, and you see it making a difference.
Now, when you're thinking about, creating a network, it's important to know, well, who you want to be part of this learning family that you're going to be in. So it's important to think of how are you going to figure out who's going to be in your community exactly, who are the people that you're going to study this thing with, and how long is your relationship going to be with them. Okay, so these are some questions that you might ponder if you're trying to figure out what type of network you're going to create. So the first one says, what learning topic do I want to explore? Maybe it's balanced literacy, maybe it's the role of special education, maybe it's STEM, or any of those other things. What areas do I have some expertise that I could share? So if you have background in something that maybe can be the launch pad for a group that wants to study that, then that's a great way to start. Build on what you know, just like write what you know. Who are some principals in other districts that I'd like to study with? Start to get to know people. We all go to, if you're a principal, we go to county gatherings or state gatherings, and you do get to know other people. And maybe it's someone, maybe there's a principal out there who you would like to get to know and study something together with, you know, and so call them up and say, you know, I'm really interested in figuring out makerspaces. Do you want to study that with me? Why don't we get a date on the calendar where we can visit each other's schools or visit another school that may already have it going, and start to figure that out.
And I think the good thing about that is when you do these, when you go to different buildings out of the 5 times out of the year, you're seeing different things in those buildings. And that's another way of connecting, saying, oh, I would like to explore that. And then you reach out to them because you know they're going through it, as Tom said. And, you know, you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Right. And not all principals are good at everything, but we all kind of like our superheroes in secret, aren't we? We all kind of have our own secret powers, our own superpowers. And so maybe there's a principal you know in your district or in another district that's really good at looking at data and figuring it out. Maybe you know someone that's really good at building community. And so if you can identify what types of strengths you know in other principals, then that might also be a good way for you to get started in knowing who you're going to work with and what you. So this is the structure of the days that we have. This is the way our network works. It doesn't have to be this way. We meet for full days from about 9:15 to 2:30. Every single time we meet, there is a different principal who acts as the host. And so we start off with breakfast because that kind of gets everyone going. A little bit of coffee, a little bit of talk. And so the host principal will start with a little bit of what we call morning chat. They give us the history of the school and how long they've been there, and thinking about the lens that we're studying that day. And then we go into some group work, which I'll get into in a little bit. Actually, let's get into it now. There's different things that we do in the group work. Sometimes we simulate conferences with teachers, or we will study a professional text, or we'll watch a video together. Sometimes we do something called PD in a box, which is it's an activity that you can take right back and apply in a faculty meeting. For example, one was where we sorted student writing according to what we see going on in the writing. And then the principals had to act as a PLC right there. We had another simulation where we role played how to create essential questions at the start of the year in a PLC around a certain topic. So there's all sorts of different things that are PD in a box. So if you have an activity that that you tried in a faculty meeting, or you'd like to try in a faculty meeting and do a dress rehearsal, this is a great opportunity for that. We also do something, one of the most important parts of our day is called a lab site. The lab site is where we go into a classroom and we work with real kids. We work with real kids at whatever grade, studying whatever it is that we're looking at. And it gives the principals a chance to teach. This has a lot of residual effects as well, because all the teachers feel like it's an honor to be chosen, because now all these principals are coming into my classroom to look at what I'm doing and learn from that. And the kids
during those lab sites, we really walk through the whole process of of a whole workshop model structure. We break it down, specifically into specific components. Like if we're looking at the mini lesson, then we might look at the teaching point, we might look at the connection, the link, and we walk and talk through the whole component, and then we take anecdotal notes and we come back together as a group, and then we start to have rich discussions about what we saw, what we didn't see, what we changed, what were some trends that we saw in the classroom or throughout the whole building.
How can you possibly supervise or observe a teacher in something that you're not teaching? So this gives you the chance to really try it out before you have to go back and do that. It also adds rich levels of depth to what you might say when you're having those observations. Let's go back to the chart. After lunch, we do something called learning visits, and learning visits are walkthroughs where we look at the school from a particular lens. And sometimes, like, lenses that we've used were conversation or independence or classroom arrangement, or sometimes we go with no lens at all. And we just kind of take a look at what that principal who's hosting us that day happens to be really proud of. It's a chance to showcase the school. And again, this is a great thing because the school that's hosting us, the teachers know about it, and they know that this is not a judgmental walk, that they're showcasing what they do well. And so it also makes them kind of clean up their act because, company's coming. And so it's really important to feel like everything is the way it should be. It can be a very, very motivating thing for the entire school community. So now, as we take this whole idea of networking and learning with others about literacy or whatever, that's all good and nice, but it's not going to be worth anything if it doesn't affect the practice of you as a leader and your teachers as teachers. And so what we're going to talk about for the rest of our time today is this whole idea of the principal getting in and coaching teachers in the classroom and outside the classroom, building up what they're knowing. And sometimes you can take what you learn from our network and make that happen.
So this right here is John Wooden. He's a legendary basketball coach. For those of you who don't know John Wooden, he won 10 NCAA championships in 12 years, but he also wrote like numerous books about leadership. So one of the things that he says is a coach is someone who can give correction without causing resentment. That's basically the point where you built that relationship or trust with that person that you're working with, that you're coaching, and you could give them honest feedback, and it's for the better of the good and not them walking away bitter because of the things that you said. I think another quote that he said off of this is, you must be interested in finding the best way, not your way. What that makes me think of is no one likes a dictator. Building consensus and getting buy-in are key skills for a good leader. And basically what you're saying is I'm looking for the best way. I'm not looking for my way. And that shows that you actually have that humanistic side to you and you understand how this works.
We want to think, how do we set goals for our school? So the first step, there's this cycle that we're going to talk about here called, it's a cycle for coaching and staff development and professional development. First step is we need to assess and plan. Yes, you assess through observations, you assess formally in those ways that we all kind of have whatever teacher evaluation program we use. We have the formal ways that we assess, but we also have informal ways that we assess. Conversations that happen. We try to assess what we see going on and create and notice the trends that are going on in our schools. So for example, you may see that there's a divide, right? That the teachers in your school that teach the younger kids may have one philosophy, and the teachers that teach older kids may have a different philosophy. Or maybe there's a trend of the idea that the younger teachers are more student-driven and the older teachers are more teacher-directed. Or you may see that there's a divide between special ed and general ed in your school. Whatever it is that you see, you need to assess that so that you know what you're working with, right? It could be that your whole school is on board with something and you can go deeper with it. And the next part of that is to make a plan. Make a plan for what they need to learn. And coaching and staff development are an important part of that. So the second part of this cycle is to actually conduct the coaching and staff development. So when we say staff development, we think of consultants, and that can be a really great thing. But it's not enough, right? Because we need to have coaching built into our school's culture. I walk down the hallways and I can't get through the hallway without teachers stopping me and talking to me about real learning things that are going on. They talk to me about students that have made great progress, or maybe they tried out a new strategy that they weren't so sure of and they found success with it. Or they say, I wish you had been here 10 minutes ago because the conversation my class was having was just awesome. And they're not telling me that because they wish I would have written it up. They're telling me that because they see me as a partner in their learning. And so the next phase, the part that we're just looking at right now, is how you can go in and coach the teachers yourself. And maybe you have a literacy coach or an instructional coach in your school, maybe you don't, but you can train them, or you can be that coach person who goes in and works with teachers and builds them up. And so then the next thing you do is, once you've coached your teachers in something, you want to create something called a nurturing accountability. That doesn't mean, like I've taught you to do a 10-minute mini lesson, now I'm going to walk around with a stopwatch and catch you doing the wrong thing. It's more of like, I'm going to watch you as you're teaching now, and I'm going to see kind of where your strengths are, and what you need to do next, and then nurture you into that. But now I'm going to hold you to a higher level because we've discussed this in our coaching work. And then the cycle repeats itself, but now it changes into reevaluate and plan. So we noticed X, and we want to think, how do we go deeper with X, as we move on, right? So it's not about this initiative overhaul that a lot of schools go through every year, where like every September it's a whole new initiative, like we're on a whole new planet. Nope, that's not effective. What we need to do is take what we have been doing and go deeper with it, and make plans and create new coaching and new things to be accountable for.
I think it's important when you're looking at the components of coaching relationship. The first thing we're going to touch upon is personal trust and relationship. This could be the hardest, but once you start getting used to it, and you get good at it, it could be become an easy process. But looking at this part first, it's not about defeating somebody. It's more about building them up. You have to be honest but supportive. You have to commit, but you have to follow through and be consistent with it. But most importantly, you have to model the behavior that you seek. You have to roll up your sleeves. You have to get in the classroom. You have to show them that you understand the work that they're doing is important, one, and two, that you understand the struggles that they're going through and you're in the trenches with them.
This slide here, we as you walk through your school, you see things, and you're going to see things that you think are awesome, and you're going to see things that you wish were different. And there's different types of responses that you can have to these things. You can respond to something that you see as a supervisor, where you give a mandate and you say, no, you have to do it this way. You have to do it my way. Or you can respond with what's called a coaching response, where you're taking the teacher's learning into consideration. And there's a time up this each, because if you see that a fire exit is blocked, or you see that there's an unsafe learning environment, you have to take a supervisory response. You have to take the responsibility, like, nope, you need to move those boxes out of the doorway, or you really have to do X, Y, or Z, because it's creating a dangerous learning environment and real learning is not happening. The effects of a supervisory or administrative response are quick. They can be punitive or complementary. The effects take place immediately, and those responses create compliance for the teacher. It doesn't make the teacher engage in reflection or think about it. They're doing it because you told them to. They're doing it because they're afraid of being in trouble. And once the change is made, reflection stops. And what the problem with that is that it may stifle future conversation between the teacher and the leader. But like I said, there's things where you need to do that. But if it were something that's more about teaching practice, 9 times out of 10, especially unless it's something that they should have known a long, long time ago, you need to go with a coaching response, which withholds judgment. The effects do take a much longer time, but it opens up this whole world of reflection and conversation and partnership with the teacher. And we don't want teachers just going through the motions in their teaching practice. We want them to really understand why they do it, so that they're doing it effectively, and so that they're doing it reflectively, and that they're doing it with kids' long-term learning in mind. Let's take a look. This next This next page here is from Reclaiming the Principalship. And it gives you the idea of, like, if you have a teacher named Amy or named whatever, right? And you see that her charts are disorganized, and you want to respond to that. And an administrative response, you would say, Amy, you've got to change these charts. They're all over the place. It's a huge mess. And so Amy may go ahead and do what you say and move the charts around and make sure that they're at eye level and that they're written in, you know, the kids are part of it, but they're not necessarily, Amy's not going to necessarily understand this. And a month from now, you may have the same problem with Amy, and you've also now alienated Amy, and she's not going to be opening up to you. She's not going to be talking to you about what she's doing. Instead, you want to have a coaching response where you kind of note what's going on in the classroom with these charts and mention it to Amy, but then build it into your coaching so that Amy understands why charts need to be arranged a certain way, or what the real role of anchor charts may be in the learning process. So why don't we go on here?
When we get to the credibility of the content, I think it goes back to what Tom was mentioning before. You don't necessarily know everything, and it's okay if you don't know everything, but don't pretend like you know something, because you will lose your credibility in the long run. And then what that's going to do is going to make you lose your personal trust in the relationship that you built from the beginning. So you have to start asking yourself, like, what do you know? What are you good at? What can you offer? You know, I do know a lot about teaching and learning, but let's say, for example, you don't know a lot about the violin. So what should you focus on? You should focus on some way that you could support and show and promote growth within that teacher. I'm sure.
Yeah. Because you can't know everything about everything, especially if you're in an elementary setting where you are observing, well, actually any setting where you're observing teachers in any subject area. You can't be an expert at all things, right? Go on with your violin example.
So, for example, if you're going in and you're seeing a lesson and you're watching somebody teach violin, violin to students, you're not going to focus so much on the violin aspect of it, but you're going to focus maybe on the questioning or the engagement piece of it, or the gradual release of that lesson. And those are ways that you could support, because you know good teaching is good teaching, and it's still going to be across the board, across any subject matter or content area.
So it's another area where teachers and parents look at you and they expect you to just know everything because you're the smart person that ended up in the principal's office, and but you're not. That's the truth. You're not going to be good at playing the violin. You're not going to be good at playing basketball. You're not going to be good at math, maybe. You know, like, it may not be your area of strength that you really associate yourself with, but it's an important thing for you to recognize that. So why don't we take a look? This tool is going to help you to try to identify the areas where areas that you could identify as something that you could possibly coach teachers in. So you want to think of an area that you're interested in, and it could be a subject like reading or science, or it could be something that kind of transcends discipline. So it could be classroom management, it could be differentiation, it could be building community or offering choice, okay? And so these questions are something that can help you to identify why this may be something that you could coach. So the first one says, what experience or successes make you comfortable in this area? And you can draw upon your own experiences as a teacher or as a principal or as a workshop participant, and draw upon that. What, if any, part of this focus are you not completely comfortable with? It's good for you to know that, because that could be something that you turn to a teacher and decide to study that together. Think of 3 very diverse teachers in your care. How would you be able to coach each of them in this area? Okay, because sometimes we have teachers that, just like we have students who are really, really strong, you know, we can't not teach them. Same thing with teachers. We can't not coach them just because they're already doing really good work. But you can use them as a partner that you would move forward with. Or how do you take the first-year teacher and give them what they need to know right now through your coaching? The fourth one says, what work could you do with a teacher in a classroom in this area or outside the classroom in this area? Each of those areas going to be a part of your coaching. And the final one says, what resources do you have at your disposal? That could be professional texts or videos or people that you know from your network or from other places that that you could turn to for support.
So that's your part.
Yeah, this is in our school, every single teacher gets coached. And so Jamie is my literacy coach, and so she coaches 2 people during one cycle. If you notice going down the left, I have 5 coaching cycles that are about 6 weeks long each. And during each cycle, Jamie coaches 2 teachers and I coach 1. And basically that means that, you know, I find time every week, once a week, to go into these teachers' classrooms and work with them. And you know, maybe you have 100 teachers and you can't do it with all your teachers this way, you know, but you can identify which teachers you're going to work with. But the thing that was pretty amazing about this is when I first started, I only worked with classroom teachers with Jamie. And then by the end of the first year, the speech therapist and the ESL teacher and all these other non-classroom teachers were coming up and saying, hey, can I get into that coaching thing? Because I started seeing it as a really positive thing. Because the buzz in the faculty room was that this is pretty cool. Tom's coming in and he's teaching the kids and he's working with them, and it's not an observation.
So when you sign up for coaching cycle, you have to use your words. So the first 2 that I'm going to get into is take your time to know where they want to grow. When I say that, whoever you're working with, whether it's the teacher or speech therapist or whatever that Tom was just talking about, you want that buy-in that we go back into. And sometimes that takes a conversation of what is it you want to work on, not necessarily you being the dictator and saying all the time, you're going to work on this, you're going to work on this. Another question that you could start off with, a statement is something that I've been curious about is, and let's study that together. A new thing in education, learn together, showing that you want to dig in deep with that teacher and you want to explore this new thing, which would be a cool experience for the both of you. The next part is I'd love to give you some feedback. What that does is
I'd love you to give me some feedback.
Oh, sorry. I'd love to give me some feedback. That's opening up the conversation, starting that dialogue between you and the person that you're coaching. This last piece, it says, you've been working on blank. Let's spend some time working on that together to go deeper. What this truly displays is that you're interested in studying with and learning with that person that you're working with, which again, it builds those relationships, it builds that trust, and it gives you a lot of credibility that we go back to those components.
You could probably think of other words that you can say to open up the conversation. You know, if teachers feel like they have a hand in setting their own goals during a coaching cycle, they're going to have more buy-in. They're going to want to do this, and they're going to feel like the time that you spend coming into the classroom and working with them is really important because you're helping meet the needs that they have. Now in New Jersey, we have to do something called PDPs, professional development plans, and so sometimes we take the goals that teachers set here and infuse them into our coaching, so it doesn't feel like, oh my God, it's another thing I've got to do, but it makes the whole thing kind of go together, and it's not another hoop that they need to jump through, but it's something that's meaningful to them. You know, so as a coach, you want to make plans, just like you make plans, you know, when you're starting a new unit as a teacher. Mm-hmm. So this chart that's here is a sample of a unit plan or coaching cycle plan, where you write down the date and you write down what you're going to do in study group. Like, so that means when you're not with students, what are you going to do in the lab site, which is when you're with students, what are you doing as the coach? What is the teacher doing, right? And then hopefully each time you go on, you're going to advance your goals. So this chart shows the gradual release of responsibility in coaching. So let's take a look at that quickly. In session 1, the coach is modeling using his own writing in instruction in a lab site, okay? And the coach helps the teacher apply generating strategies so she can write her own piece in a study group, okay? What is the teacher doing this? The teacher's taking a more passive role because at first she's just observing, and then she's writing a piece of her own. So it's very, very safe for the teacher. It's more risky for the coach, and the teacher's gonna appreciate that you're putting yourself out there. During the second session, the coach prepares the teacher to demonstrate explicitly using her own writing in the study group time for when they go into the classroom. The coach is doing the whole mini lesson, except where the teacher is now going to be using her writing to demonstrate. So now the teacher is slowly taking on more and more of the work that has been modeled for her or for him. And so, and then you're able as the coach to go deeper and deeper each time. That's the wonderful thing about having a cycle. It's not one-stop shopping. You're able to build on the learning from the previous session and go deeper and deeper and deeper each time.
So how do you coach? There's components of coaching where you're in the lesson and you're walking through it, and then you have study group coaching. One way to do it is through reel-to-reel, study a professional text. These ones are kind of similar. You watch a professional video for reel-to-reel, or you're in a professional text, and basically what you're doing is you can view what's being discussed through various lenses in these conversations. All these components that we're going to be talking about, we do in our network, and we practice them, and then we take them back to our buildings.
So the idea of role play in a study group, remember there's no students involved in role play. In this, it's like if you're studying reading conferences, something that you can do is one person acts as the coach, and as the teacher, one person acts as the student, and you're actually role playing what a conference looks like. It's a safe way to try things out.
Next one is four corners. Four corners, this allows you to the lesson over and over again. It doesn't have to be exactly four corners. It could be 5 or 6, whatever the case may be. But each time the students transition, the teacher's reflecting on what they delivered, and it gives them a chance to reteach it again and either take away things they thought went well or work on things that they missed.
Four Corners is something that was developed at the Reading and Writing Project. And just to piggyback on this, teachers would plan out a lesson ahead of time that they teach to a small group in one corner of the room. And so the lesson is going to take 10 minutes. And then at the end of the 10 minutes, the students go around to other parts of the room. And each time the teachers reteach the same lesson, but they try to do it a little bit better each time.
The next part is hearing. Or their actions. Let's say you're doing a mini lesson and you're doing the active engagement component of it. You would mirror the exact talk and the exact sayings that you're saying as you're crouching down and meeting with those students while they're doing a turn and talk or things of that nature.
Narrating your teaching is when you're working with the students and you're teaching the kids, but then you're also then turning on looking at the grown-ups and saying, so teachers, what I just did was blah blah blah, and you're naming what you did, because if you don't name it, then sometimes they might misunderstand something that you were trying to do, or not quite get why you did something. And then we also have whispering in, which is sort of like Cyrano de Bergerac, where the teacher is teaching the student and you're whispering to the teacher, try this, or go back, do this again. Don't do this the first time because it can feel a little awkward to the teacher, and you want to build some trust first. But it's a great thing where it's just with one kid usually, and the teacher knows that you have their back. You're their safety net, kind of giving them some of the words to use.
So Tom was talking about narrating your teaching. Sorry about that. These are guide sheets that we usually held through that piece of it. So just to briefly on this, basically focuses the teacher and they're listening, so they know what they're paying attention to. So let's say it's the teaching point. What is the teaching point? How many times did you say it in the connection during the teach part, active involvement? And then you're taking that teaching point and you're turning it to linking it to the mini lesson.
There's another one where if you're conducting a conference with a student, you want the teachers to listen. It might just be like, oh, that's a nice conference, but I'm going to tell them that you want to listen from the lens of looking for something to complement and something to teach. And this is just a place where they can jot down as many possible ideas they have for what to complement or what to teach. So the coaching bulletin board is something that literacy coaches that I work with have developed, where they have a bulletin board somewhere central in the school, and they devote it to some area of PD. This one is an example of the qualities of good writing. And so there's 5 parts on this bulletin board about all these different qualities. And if we take a closer look, this is elaboration, and it's got a definition of what elaboration is, and it's got different handouts and pieces of student writing and lesson plans and anchor charts and things like that that go up there. And if you notice, by each piece, there is a Post-it that gives an explanation about why this piece is good. So this is a piece of teacher writing. This is a piece of writing that the teacher wrote. And next to it are strategies that can be used, that can be taught using this story to add internal story to their writing.
So now, I want to think back to question number 2. How did the team change because of your work together? How did you change? This is just basically the practice. You should be able to coach it after the coaching experience. You have to think of the bigger picture. If it's not having a bigger impact, then it's not worth it.
So the third one, how can you use your work with this teacher to inform the work with other teachers? Maybe you did something in this classroom that was really cool, or you saw that the teacher was doing something amazing. Maybe that's something that you can share at a faculty meeting. Maybe that's something that you can get the teacher to share at a faculty meeting. Maybe that's something that can inspire work that can be something that the entire school is going to work on next.
So the last piece was, how has the work in the cycle helped you think about bigger goals for your school and its climate? So it's basically taking a step back from what you just coached that person on, and you're saying, what's the bigger picture? How can you make this spread throughout your building to have that big impact, which kind of goes along with other pieces of the coaching reflection piece?
So as a leader, it's really important that you maintain that learning stance so that you can be what Roland Barthes calls the head learner of your school, creating an excitement for kids and an excitement for your teachers about learning, so that they keep on learning. One way to do that is to create or join a learning network that meets for years and years, or meets once or twice, but it makes the work of being a leader a lot less lonely and a whole lot more meaningful.
And you really do grow professionally from it, meeting other people, their great ideas, and basically their mindset and what they went through, their experiences, things that you've never experienced, things that you did experience, and just how to do it better and perfect your craft.
So the only wrong way to do this is to not do it. The only wrong way to do this is to wait for someone else to come around and create something. What you want to do is kind of go and just take the bull by the horns with this and start this on your own. You know, think of those first steps that you'll take, either to network or to coach. It's going to change the way that you do this, and it's okay to give yourself permission to fuddle around with this a little bit before being perfect at it. Okay, because that's one of the things that's going to empower you as the principal. There's so many things that make our work hard. This is something that will make your work easier in the long term, and it's going to change the way that you see yourself and the way that your teachers and your students see you as well. All right, so thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoy the rest of the Ed Collab.
Hi there, everyone. Just wanted to give you a preview of what's coming up in the next sessions. We have coming up lots of wonderful workshops. We have books, An Avenue for Change by Diana Ferreira and Rebecca Giapoli. We also have translanguaging in children in the middle grades with Carla Espana and Luz Herrera. Our workshop number 4, unfortunately, has been canceled. That was by Dana Stukowiak. Unfortunately, she cannot be here today, but we have a lot of other great workshops, so please stay tuned and for the upcoming session at 12 o'clock. See you soon. Bye-bye.